Dirty hands means clean theology. Can you dig it? What's going on, all my local guys and gals and long distance pals?
We back.
We are back.
I gotta be honest, I still am digging listening to that new intro. I think you did a great job on that.
It was awesome.
It's groovy.
Well, Justin is our editor, our tech wizard, and most of our brains. So,
and the Facebook genius.
yeah, well, yeah, it's true.
Yeah,
It's a labor of love.
the tech guy.
Well, it was his brother that bestowed the crown upon me.
True. How's that Kit
Yeah,
Kat?
shout out to my brother Mike, who has helped us through numerous technical difficulties.
Yes.
But I'm kind of excited about this week.
Yep.
It's
But
a little different.
I don't know. I think maybe we should go ahead and pray. What do you think? I think it's Ben's turn to pray.
Yeah, Ben.
Dear Lord, thank you for today. Thank you for this good weather that we've had. Lord, please give us discernment. Please have this conversation we're about to have be enlightening and have it reach who it needs to reach and speak through us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Amen. You go right ahead. You jump into this.
Well, I guess just like getting into it, it's like it was probably about 2 years ago. I ran across a documentary and watched it, and it was on the founding fathers, and them being Christians. In school we're always taught that we were found on Christian principles. We're a Christian nation, one nation under God, and that's told to you from kindergarten. So it's kind of like just beating in your head, And this documentary basically challenged that assumption and actually took a deep dive into it and really exposed quite the opposite. And I remember it was just mind-blowing. But at the beginning of the year, or actually at the tail end of 2022, we sat down and was discussing what topics and stuff that we wanted to talk about. And this was one of the ones that was brought up. But I had to rewatch that documentary, and I can't remember the name of it. Stephen, I'm sure he's got it written down over here, the name of this documentary, if you want to go back and watch it all over.
Yeah, I haven't watched it yet, but I will.
Yeah, it was really good. And then I bought some books on the Freemasons and even alchemy and stuff like that to take a further deep dive into this. I think this is going to be a good discussion.
This documentary was called The Hidden Faith of the Founding Fathers. You can find it on YouTube, but I will tell you, it is enlightening. A lot of what we're pulling today comes from that, along with some other sources as well. But it's just a really good deep dive. Buckle your seatbelts. About 3 hours long, but it's going to really change your perception of why we're here. Like, why was our country founded? Like, where did it come from, and what were the principles, the morals, and the reasons that brought us to where we are today. And actually, after you hear some of the things today, maybe where we are today won't surprise you so much.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of a weird way of looking at it.
Yeah, because, we've been always taught one thing. And then now, I guess with this documentary and some other stuff, it's a little different.
And it seems to be like a common trend. And then that's the reason why there's shows like ours.
That's right.
It's like, once we start digging in and looking into these things that we are told, we find out quite often that there's a lot more to the story.
Right. And as they say, the winner writes history.
Oh, yeah.
So they'll say whatever they want to say, kind of fluff it up a little bit, leave out the gruesome details.
Which I'm not denying, the first peoples, on that Mayflower, the Pilgrims were Christian people. That's not what I'm getting at.
No.
Yes, they set out here to form a Christian nation. But we're specifically talking about the founding fathers, the ones that was the heads of the Revolutionary War.
The first Congress.
Yeah, that formed our union.
Right. I guess they'd be considered the first Congress.
I guess I kind of start here a little bit with I was looking at a few different things, and I found a guy I found pretty interesting was Gordon Wood. He's a professor of history at Brown University, and when he was kind of confronted with the question, the guy, I mean, he's excellent. You can find some of his work too, a few different places, but Gordon Wood. And he said that most founding fathers were not emotionally right or religious, is how he said it. And he said some were even anti-religious to the point where Jefferson hated organized religion. And a big thing that we'll jump into, and this is a big thing that we see throughout the founding fathers, is they believed in the principles of what Jesus stood for, but they did not believe in any of his divinity. And that's something that we're going to see straight across the board here with pretty much all the founding fathers as we kind of go through this.
Right. It's like it was a good structure for
moral teaching
and civilization to work as a whole, but obviously not, following Jesus and stuff like that.
With I guess starting it off, a guy named Charles Thompson. He was the one that made the final call on the Great Seal of the United States and on the back of the American dollar bill. The pyramid with the eye on top. Some people call it the all-seeing eye. But this guy kept great records and details about the revolution and the men that were involved. People even begged him to publish his historical records, but he declined. Stephen, you want to tell us what his reply to those requests were?
The quote here, after he was encouraged to publish this, he said, "No, I ought not, for I should contradict all the histories of the great events of the Revolution. Let the world admire the supposed wisdom and valor of our great men. I shall not undeceive future generations."
That's that rewriting history stuff.
That really tells you.
Undeceive.
And this guy, Charles Thompson, was the congressional secretary from 1774 to 1789. Somebody who, the congressional secretary, who wrote everything down, who was in the middle of everything, kept all the records, would have had the most complete, most accurate history of how our country was founded. And what he ended up doing with those documents, he said you can't release them for that reason. So he eventually destroyed them. He burned them.
Destroyed them so nobody could find out the truth.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I know, like I was telling you guys earlier, I've been watching a little stuff about the Revolutionary War, and there's a lot of stuff that the verbiage would have freed the slaves at the time of the writing of the Declaration of Independence. But they didn't want to do that. Now, obviously, we all know slavery's wrong. And if I guess Jesus didn't really address slavery, but if our God-given rights totally debunked slavery, and they had to rewrite the Declaration multiple times, so therefore they didn't have to free their slaves.
Well, even the atheists try to defend, or try to fight us and say, well, the Torah says it's okay for slavery. Well, the thing is a walk with God is a process. It's not an overnight change.
No,
even
not
though
at all.
What a lot of, people in this area, like Southern Baptists and stuff, I've always been taught, when you're saved, boom, you're not going to sin no more. No, it's a process. And God meets you where you are. Right. So God was like, okay, you got slaves. Well, I'm going to lay down some laws where you're going to have to treat them good at least. Right. My plan down the road is to get rid of this, but for right now, I'm going to meet you where you're at, and you're at least going to have a set of laws and be set apart from everybody else, and you're going to treat them well.
Right.
And biblically, a lot of the times that they were, and not speaking of like the Egyptian slavery or things of that, but when they were slaves within their own people, a lot of times, and what would be is they couldn't settle a debt. So they would sell themselves into slavery. They're working it off. So that's the terminology.
That's not really a slave. You're working it off.
And then the
that's
law,
different.
The Levitical law at the time would, every 7 years, it would forgive all debts and all slaves would be freed.
Right.
That's the Levitical law. So I mean, you see, that's the and I love how God works, and it's every seventh day. You know, it's the completion.
Right, the numbers and
it. There's so much there.
Well, on top of that, you know, one of our that Jesus said to do is love your neighbor as yourself. I don't want to be nobody's slave. I mean, you know, come on now.
It's all you bankers take note.
Yeah.
After 7 years, you're going to have to forgive our debt.
Forgive my debt.
It's biblical.
That house is mine.
It's biblical. I like that.
Like Stephen said, don't take our word for it. Read your Bible.
Right. True story.
Kill that rabbit. Now we're going to
Okay,
go back
sorry.
back to the original hole.
Oh, wait.
Let's back it up.
There you go.
There we go. So, with Charles Thompson's comments, you know, he destroyed the manuscripts, and he says he shall not undeceive a future generations. Now, what have we been deceived of is the question. You know, in God we trust. Is that a trick?
On your money.
Actually, you know, the way that I take this, and once again, this is going to be my personal point of view, and the way I interpret that, I can't say this is 100%, you know, but if you look at what they believed, most of them believed it was more of what we call deism, right? They believed in a divine creator, but a creator that did not have any interaction with man. There was a total separation. So they were smart enough to understand evolution wasn't real, but at the same time, they couldn't understand anything beyond the fact that God created it. Anything past that was
something.
What happened here happened here.
Right.
There was no other divine outside forces, anything like that.
So I think this would probably be like a good segue to just kind of break down Freemasonry, because all the founding fathers were Freemasons and members of, you know, the lodges, and even the ones that are not outright proven, you know, you are the company you keep. Even the ones that are disputed, that they don't know, all their best friends were Masons, and they had Masonic thoughts and you know, alignments.
I would say that they, and I mean the proven amount of Masons, you know, I think they said there was 9, I think it's 9
not confirmed names in lodges.
That were lodges, some that were lodge leaders, you know, like Benjamin Franklin was a lodge leader in Paris.
And Philadelphia.
Yeah. So
and a member of Hellfire Club.
Well, and that's a whole different.
And a womanizer.
Yeah, we'll get there.
He was.
And in 1998, they found 10 bodies buried in the basement he had lived in his whole life. I'm sorry, we'll get there later.
Oh my!
But anyway, sorry. I mean, this is a rabbit hole that takes us so far, and they believe that there was a God, but after that, so they believed in God, but they did not believe in the. It wasn't
specifically Yahweh.
No, it sure wasn't. And actually, if you track it back, a lot of this comes from a lot of the French ideologies that were happening pre our revolution, which was like 10 or so years pre to the French Revolution. And those ideas were founded on human reason.
The goddess reason.
Well, and that's where they come from, is it was the goddess reason, and to the point where they'd show her even on a throne, where they'd put her above, where reason ruled all, human reason. So if an idea did not jive with your human reason, if it didn't make sense, then it wasn't true.
Yes.
That kind of sounds familiar, don't it?
Yeah. Well, see,
today's world,
there's lots of, you know, rumors and stories about, you know, the Masons being, you know, an occult and, you know, Satan worship and sacrifice. You know, we're not going to go down that hole. We're going to talk about the things that we can prove, you know, with them being a secret society. You know, it leaves room for all kinds of speculation. But what we do know is that the only rule to become a Freemason is that you must proclaim a divine architect, that there is a God, you know, whether it's Yahweh, Allah, Shiva, whatever. And another rule they had with the lodge was religion and politics were supposed to be left out of the lodge and in the meetings, you know, anything that I guess that would cause division. But they were all about knowledge. You know, basically man evolutionizing himself into a god himself,
which take
ruled
that back
by
to
reason.
Rake that back to the Garden of Eden, and you will
Genesis
be as gods.
3, yes, you shall be as gods.
And that's something that humanity has always tried to get back to. So as soon as we try to put ourselves in that position, and it's something that you see repetitive throughout history, but keep going. Sorry.
Yeah. So just because, they say, oh, well, the Freemasons are Christians, they believe in God. No, they believe in a God. So, I mean, that's pretty broad spectrum right there. And like I mentioned, we're not talking about the Pilgrims. That was 150 years had passed from the time of the Pilgrims coming here to the Revolution. And that left a lot of time for a lot of bad seed and stuff to get planted. So I guess going to a really key figure in this whole plot was Thomas Paine. Thomas Paine, it says the Revolution begins with this guy. He wrote Common Sense, and he brought the Declaration of Independence. Benjamin Franklin encouraged him to come to America and write Common Sense. John Adams even said Paine's words were equal to Washington's sword. So they were saying that, if he wouldn't have wrote, Common Sense and his ideologies that he brought, the revolution would have never got started. That the words of Thomas Paine were the spirit behind the American Revolution.
The book Common Sense was what kind of opened the eyes of the Americans.
It kind of makes you wonder what was behind, and maybe who indirectly was behind that. I mean, yes, Thomas Paine wrote it, but when you look at it, they took that same book.
And it wasn't big.
They translated it into French, and then the French Revolution kind of came as a part of that as well.
Well, he wrote that book, and then when just about Paine, he wrote the Common Sense book, and then after the first year of war, he wrote another book because George Washington was getting his butt kicked so bad to trying to refire the Revolutionary War.
And see, a lot of people, historians and stuff, look back at this and they call this the Age of Reason. Well, the Age of Reason, hated Christianity. He's even quoted saying, "I cannot dishonor my Creator by calling it by His name." This is the words of Thomas Paine. He believed in a God, just not the one of the Bible. Like I said, he was a Freemason. He even is quoted saying, "It is the fable of Jesus Christ as told in the New Testament, and the wild and visionary doctrine raised there on to which I contend." I mean, that's a pretty strong statement.
And it only gets worse.
Oh, yeah.
That was another quote from the story, taking it as it is, talking about the Bible. The story as it is, taking it as it is told is blasphemy, obscene. I mean, he's straight up calling the Bible blasphemous. I mean, that's the most blasphemous thing you can do, is call the Bible blasphemous.
Yeah. And 1 John, chapter 4 even talked about that. He said, "Beloved, do not trust every spirit, but test all spirits to see whether they belong to God. Many false prophets have gone out into this world. This is how you can tell and know that the Spirit of God. Every spirit that acknowledges Jesus Christ come in the flesh belongs to God. Every spirit that does not acknowledge Jesus does not belong to God. This is the spirit of Antichrist."
And this takes us right back into that Ephesians 6:12 that we talk about all the time. What are we ultimately battling? Behind this, when you have people usually that, and you look at this throughout history and everything that, and we even deal with this sometimes with just stuff online. You can post something about Jesus. You can post something about alien and no one cares. You post something about Jesus and you will be under attack. And why is it that people have to, and we look at this and we look at some of these quotes from these founding fathers, they're so adamantly against, not just I don't believe that, adamantly against, fired up for that. And to me, that seems like maybe there's a little more behind that. If you you catch my drift there a little
Yeah.
bit.
That's the spirit behind the pen.
Exactly.
Right. That's the same with like an atheist. Why are you so concerned about me worshiping a God if you don't believe there's a God?
Yeah.
You just look at me like I'm silly.
Well, just
You
like
know.
kids with Santa Claus and the Tooth Fairy.
Yeah.
You know, they're not real.
What?
So do you-
Whoa.
Sorry, kids.
Whoa.
Whoa.
So do you just
buddy.
run right out and just tell all these little kids, you know,
Yeah.
you're stupid, you're an idiot, Santa
Yeah.
Claus is not
Yeah,
real, Tooth Fairy's
girls-
not real, and
girls who play
don't
with
push your
unicorns.
ideas on me.
You know. Right. Yeah. That's yeah.
No, you know
just-
he's not real.
okay,
You let
whatever.
the kids believe what they want to believe.
Right.
Unicorns have been proven real, so let's not get carried away.
But you know, it's we talked about this the spirit of reason. It could not believe in supernatural things of the Bible, and Stephen touched on it. The goddess of reason. Was exalted on a throne, and many statues and pictures. The 1599 Geneva Bible had footnotes talking about how pagans would enthrone the goddess of reason. Reason would govern your understanding.
And hold on, I pulled a good one for that too.
Well, even with the reason stuff, while he's looking, I mean, look at like Sparta. They were all about reason. All the Greece,
Greek
they weren't
philosophers and-
Christian by no means.
How about 2 Corinthians 10:4? We use God's mighty weapons to knock down the strongholds of human reasoning and to destroy false arguments. That one, it's funny how you can see how God gave us the tools so far ahead of time and throughout history that to combat all this, to know the truth. And it just blows me away that we can take a book, some of it which was written, way before Jesus, significantly before Jesus, some of it that's written just post Jesus, and we can take that book that's, a couple thousand years old, and we can still use that
Still
book to
apply
this
it.
day to
Yeah.
everything that's going on, even right now. And what did you just say? What did you just say about the, don't take our word for it?
Oh yeah, read your Bible.
Because
That's
it's
right.
there. It's right in front of you. And you just need to sit down and read it because it gives you the answers.
Well, yeah, I mean that's the whole thing with the worship of reason. I mean, in other words, it's the worship of the human intellect. They became their own gods. Thomas Paine even said, "My own mind is my own church." I mean,
That's
how
scary.
pompous.
Well, see, and that's the thing. They all were full of themselves
Oh yeah.
because it ain't like, my obviously my great grandparents come over on the Mayflower. I own a farm. I'm not in Congress. It's the ones who are well off,
Oh yeah.
who come from money, who were already established in Europe and Britain that came over. They already was in that standing.
And Satan is the ruler of this world.
Oh, yeah.
And
Well, there ain't
they were prospering because they were in line with that spirit.
Exactly.
And just like the old, we're from Tennessee, so we're good old boys. My dad used to always tell me, if you run around with the dogs, you're gonna get the fleas.
I got one just like that.
Birds of a feather flock together.
Yeah, Dad would say if you hang out with trash, you'll start smelling like trash before you know it. You're trash with them.
See, I got one too. I tell my kids, I heard it online somewhere, but it just stuck with me. I think it was Les Brown. I love that guy. Great motivational speaker. But he said, I don't care if you're an eagle. If you're running around with a bunch of turkeys, eventually you're going to learn how or forget how to fly, and you're going to start clucking.
Yep.
And I don't know how eagle tastes, but turkey's delicious.
Yes.
Did you know? Sideline. They wanted to make the turkey the United States bird instead of the bald eagle.
I'm glad they did.
And if they did, we would not know what turkey tastes like.
Do you
We'd be
know
eating
though?
eagle on
That
Thanksgiving.
may be-
Bald eagle.
That may be a more appropriate mascot for our country right now.
Yeah.
What, the turkey?
The turkey.
The turkey's smart.
It's delicious.
Well,
It will just stand there and let a dog attack it. I mean, it's not an eagle. It's not graceful. It's not beautiful. It's not elegant.
Right. True. Yeah, they are pretty ugly.
And they make terrible noises.
But with
Actually,
that,
But they're yummy.
I love
They
them.
are yummy. I mean, you have some.
I do have some.
but with that terminology,
Sorry for the sideline.
oh, that's good. But with that terminology, let's take a look at who the founding fathers, ran around with, and specifically Thomas Paine. This guy was close to Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, Ben Franklin. As I said, birds of a feather flock together. You run around with like-minded people.
Yep.
So let's kind of look into some of these other guys and quotes that they had. You got anything on John Adams over there?
I do have a couple things on John Adams. I want to get back at some point to Washington because I got some stuff from that same professor from Brown University that had some good stuff on him too, which I think is interesting. But paging through my notes, which you said John Adams?
Yeah.
One of my quotes that I found from him is when philosophical reason is clear and certain by intuition or necessary induction, no subsequent revelation supported by prophecies or miracles can supersede it. That is, by definition, following the goddess of reason. Taking your human, if your brain can't see, can't understand how something didn't happen, then it didn't happen. This is, and we'll get into this, I'm sure, a little more, but this is where one of the biggest problems the founding fathers had with the Bible was the virgin birth.
And the miracles, anything supernatural.
Anything supernatural, but they really went after the virgin birth. And that's another one of those Thomas Paine quotes. I'm sorry, I missed this one when we were talking about it, but what is it the Testament teaches us? To believe that the Almighty committed debauchery with a woman engaged to be married, and the belief of this debauchery is called faith. I mean...
So in other words, he's saying God had sex with Mary.
Well, he's saying that there's no... Because he doesn't understand how a woman who is a virgin... could have a child.
It defies reason.
And because that, then something had to have or had to copulate with her to make her have a child. So therefore, it's not supernatural. They're taking the supernatural out everywhere they can, and this is the supernatural that the church is okay with. Mm-hmm. We talk about that all the time. There's the supernatural that is Jesus. And then we talk about that supernatural worldview where we see it in so many other places in the Bible
that most churches try to not talk about.
But that just blows me away, and we're taught that these were upstanding Christian gentlemen. I mean, throughout history, and it's
a lie. And even with the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson was the one that penned it. Says, "We hold these truths to be self-evident." Reason first. That's what that is. This intentionally called out the irrational teachings, quote unquote, of the Bible. We hold these truths to be self-evident. Reason rules. Mm-hmm. Reason sits on the throne. In Colossians 2:8 says, "Beware lest any man deceive you through philosophy and vain deceit, after the tradition of men, after the rudiments of the world, and not after Christ." 1 Corinthians 2:14, "The natural man receiveth not the things of the Spirit of God, for they are foolish unto him," because reason rules.
Yeah. Look at it that way, it makes better sense.
Yeah. I mean, like Stephen just said, a book written thousands of years before saw this coming.
Oh, yeah.
And is trying to prepare you for it.
I mean, it's not even that it saw it coming. I mean, it probably was the same then as it is,
I think, to some degree.
At this point and then now.
But you have to understand the spirit behind that pen was
They're
God.
probably wearing bell bottoms.
Right? We talked about that before. The spirit behind the pen, who is it?
Oh, yeah.
The spirit behind that pen was God. It was the Holy Spirit that was helping them write the truth that came from God, that inspired word. And when we're looking at some of these other things, and then we can go in. You started with Thomas Jefferson. You might as well go into start working on Thomas Jefferson here and kind of going into some of his exploits.
Oh yeah. Well, leading into that, I wanted to hit this book, and this is on my list of books, but it's called "Fire in the Minds of Men" by Dr. James Billington. You know, America during the Revolution was most influenced by occultism and Romanism of Germany. You know, they took the flame from the Christian altars to the Masonic lodges. You know, these are quotes from this book, and talks about the influence and stuff of these founding fathers. You know, occult alchemists promised to turn dross into gold. You know, this reappeared to recreate the golden age. You know, and this goes back to Genesis 6, when the gods, you know, walked amongst us, you know, and the mighty men of old. This is what these guys in these Freemason societies were trying to accomplish. But through themselves, you know, ye yourself will be as gods. They were trying to bring back reason and the golden age and all these things, and that's the spirit of Satan. You know, I mean, that goes all the way back to Genesis 3. But his reference to Germany was Bavaria, you know, and that's where the Illuminati is found. You know, and it was founded 1776, y'all.
Mm-hmm.
Coincidence, I'm sure.
Ain't that something?
Yeah. Okay. You know, its links to Masonry are acknowledged by the highest levels of the Freemasonry today. The Illuminati was originally an inner circle of Freemasons, and they were called the Enlightened Ones.
They were illuminated.
I tell you one thing. I've been in a Mason's lodge before through work.
Sure.
Well, it was definitely through work.
You're on
Now,
the inside.
on the outside, you know, they had like a coat rack, little wooden pegs. And there is all these weird looking symbols with, you know, on chains hanging there. And then, which the room that they go do their ceremonies or whatever in, it was freaky. Like when I opened the door, because I was curious, you know, I wonder what in here looks like. I mean, downstairs was just tables, like where they'd have a, you know, your fellowship hall. Everybody get together and have dinner and have spaghetti night. Nothing going. I mean, they had pictures around the wall of all the leader Masons or whatever they are. But I mean, it was when I opened that door and set foot in there. It was kind of like your wife talking about going into that shop with a Ouija board. Oh, it was freaky.
Dark, heavy spirit.
Oh, I was like, looked around. It was like, I'm out. It was weird. Paintings, like some weird shapes on the floor, and all. I mean, it was weird.
Well, you know, the symbolism, like, since you brought it up, behind all that stuff and their rituals of initiation.
Yeah.
You know, what they would do is a person that wanted to become, you know, an entry-level Freemason, they had this ritual where everybody would be, you know, hooded and covered and in a dark room, and they would take the initiate and expose his right breast and roll up, I can't remember which leg, but one of his legs, they'd roll his pant leg up, and then they'd put a noose around his neck, and then a bag or a tarp over his head. And then someone would lead him through the lodge. Well, the lodge had a black and white checkerboard floor. And this was like to symbolize, you know, good and evil being together. And like basically the world is a chessboard.
Okay.
And that there inevitably has to be bad moves, evil moves, dark places to go in order for the greater good. And we all know, you know, in the game of chess, you know, they always say, you know, nobody
sacrifices this.
Sacrifice the pawns.
Yeah.
Okay. And they would, at the front of the room was an altar and a flame. And that's where the highest level, the worship master would be.
Right.
And this other guy, he would lead this blindfolded guy around with a dagger to his right breast. Well, the symbolism in that was, you know, Freemasonry only accepted men. So the right breast was exposed to show that he was not a female. The pant leg was rolled up to show that he was not a slave. There was no chains. So basically, you're not a slave to the dogma, of religious thought and stuff like that. You are a free thinker. You are a free man. And you're blindfolded because you're ignorant. And they would lead you in from the west door because they believed that wisdom came from the east. Ignorance came from the west. So you'd enter from the west side,
moving towards
the east, but you were being led.
Right.
And you were wondrously being led around like you were lost. And it was just symbolism. You're lost.
He's probably just walking around in circles or whatever.
And after so long a time, the initiate would ask to show me the light. Then they would lead you to the east, to the altar where the flame was, and unveil you. And there you would see the flame, and they would have these other symbolic things there, and it was like, I can't remember exactly what they called it, basically the book of knowledge. And if you were a Christian believer, this was the Bible. If you were, a Buddhist, it was the Buddhist book. Whatever religious affiliation that you aligned yourself with, that's what the book was. And then you would have the square, the 90-degree angles. That's where you get the verbiage, he's a square dude. He's right. He's upright. There's just so much symbolism in that. But then you would go up there and then you'd make your pledges and stuff like that. But they would illuminate you. There's just so much stuff there. Yeah.
I don't know enough about that stuff. I haven't really delved into that like you, but I just have a feeling anytime there's a ritual or a ceremony and it's not something that is God ordained.
And it's in secret.
Yeah.
Like, what are you hiding?
And the phrase being blackballed, that came from Freemasonry. Because, even like in the Bible, where when we get our new name and you're given the white stone, that was a stone back then to show pardon or, a thumbs up of approval. The black stone was denial or guilty. So once you'd done all these rites, you were let out, and then the Freemasons would all vote on whether or not you made it into the lodge. And you were given a white and black stone, and that's how you voted. So if somebody voted no against you, they put a black stone into the bowl. And when you didn't get it, you were blackballed. That's where that terminology comes from. And even the term, oh man, I was given the 3rd degree. That's from Freemasonry, because there was 3 levels, and there's so much symbolism, man. Like once you get past the first stage, the first stage, you're not given any kind of, quote unquote secrets. Then once you progress and do good works and all these things, you progress to the 2nd level. They take you to this spiral staircase, and you ascend to the 2nd level. And there's all this ritual, with corn and wine and all this stuff, And then the 3rd degree was the hardest to get, hardest to obtain. And that's why you get that phrase today, I was given the 3rd degree, because it was so extraneous, I guess, and hard of an ordeal to obtain.
Well, I do know, since we're talking about Freemasons, majority, if not all, I would say probably not all, but mostly all of our presidents have been Freemasons.
There's been a bunch of other societies they've been parts of throughout history too, like Nixon was in the Red Friars, or you look at Skull and Bones was like the Bushes were both in the both of them were in the Skull and Bones Society, and then was it Jefferson was in the Flat Hat Society or something of that nature. There's only 6 members at any given time. But that was supposedly, he said, didn't even think it was still in existence when he was president or around that time. It's just, the thing is, in the end, if it needs to be a secret,
something's wrong.
There probably isn't good.
Yeah.
There's not many things that come good from secrets, and I think you can say that from your kid just telling you a lie, like, "Hey, Dad, no, I didn't break the lamp and hide it behind the couch." That's a secret. Secrets aren't good.
No.
And you know who knows everything? Everything you've ever done, you can't hide a secret from.
Oh, no, not at all.
Exactly, and that's the thing. So in the end, those secrets are all exposed. We can't hide that stuff. We can't. just looking at this stuff, the more and more I get into this stuff, it's enlightening, but it's discouraging. And I hate to say it that way, but seeing how much, and we're talking about the foundation. Sorry, I'm backing it up to what we were actually supposed to be talking about.
Yeah, it's the foundation of America.
We keep jumping off. There's just so many different rabbit holes we can go down. But looking back and seeing, and when watching that documentary and then reading some of the other stuff, it's discouraging. And to think that, our country was founded on morals different than what I was taught that they were. I mean, it's something that I don't think the majority of people understand or know, that our country was not founded on the God Yahweh, as we say. It was founded on the fact that there was a creator, but give him whatever name you want. This was an eye-opening research session for me when we started really delving into this, and it got deep for me. And I'll be honest, it's really dark, and it bothers me, I guess. But at the same time, that's why it's so important, and why God always talks about is to surround yourself with other like-minded Christians, to have good upstanding people in your circle, so that you know that somebody's got your back when it comes to those things.
And then when you get off stray, they correct you.
Exactly.
They keep you on the right path.
Because you look around and you look at this stuff we're looking at right now, how easily is it for somebody to be pulled astray?
Fall into it.
I want to belong. I want to be part of.
I want power.
Where do you think these societies come from? How do they? I want to belong to that. That's exclusive.
It's secret. It's interesting.
It is, and it draws people in. And I think that's half the reason why something like the Masons or other organizations are. I mean, Masons aren't really secret. Let's be honest. It's semi-secret. That we don't know everything that goes on. Everybody knows there's Freemasons. Right. Everybody doesn't know what goes on, and I think that's just for appeal more than almost anything else, is to get people to desire that, to want that.
Well, even what I think is funny too is just the ones that say, they're Christian men. Well, all their practices, all their rituals and stuff say otherwise. It's like, I know everybody's seen that painting of George Washington with that white apron on, with his finger up in the air holding that chisel or whatever. But that is complete contradictory of the Bible, because in Genesis, when God made for them coverings, right? Mm-hmm. That was their covering. Well, this white lambskin apron they would wear was their covering, and they say, it's biblical. This is as God gave Adam, a skin covering. This is our skin covering to represent that. Well, the thing is, they wear that because they reject Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ is your covering. He is your righteousness. They believe that apron symbolized your works. So all the good deeds that you're a sinful person and all this stuff, but all the good deeds that you do is your covering before God. And that's what they wore. They wore that and they're even buried in it, because they believe when they stand before the great architect, they have to have their covering on of all their good works, and that's what's going to save them. But they're going to be
mistaken.
Very, very surprised.
Well, let's hope that people repent and come back to,
of
the
course,
light, as far as that goes. But speaking of Washington, I think I think that's another. You think about the founder of our country, someone who is revered so much. When you think about think about the 4th of July. George Washington. We think of him as the father of our country. And, like you said, part of the Freemasons, one of those groups. There's not a lot. And I wonder if we still had that Charles Thompson original history, if what would be in there. But Washington went to an Episcopal church, right? I think this is kind of funny. However, Episcopal churches, I don't know if you know much, they kneel a lot. Washington always refused to kneel. He would pray standing up. Yeah,
because his pastor recorded all this stuff in his diary that they have found.
They did. And Washington would refuse to take communion. And when the priest or the minister came and confronted him about it, he stopped coming on Communion Sundays.
Yeah, because it was crazy because it said, they found this, I believe it was in this guy's journal, this pastor's journal. He wrote about it directly and said that he got to noticing that every day that they done communion, that he would get up and leave before sacrament was given out. But he would leave his wife behind. And he would take the horse and buggy and go home and then send the carriage back for his wife. So his wife was a believer. He wasn't. And he would always leave and then send the buggy back for his wife. So then that pastor confronted him, and the pastor wrote in his journal that he agreed with him. He said, "Yes, you're right. I need to set a better example, Father. Thank you for, correcting me." But then he just stopped showing up when they done communion. So he didn't have to stand up and walk out. It's like he had to give off the appearance of being a Christian.
Well, see, at the same time, like I was telling you, that is a history show about the revolution that we've been watching. It says that, you always heard that Washington didn't want to be the general and he didn't want to be the president. They said that he would pretend that he didn't want it so that he would get it. But in reality, he craved it. So it goes on top, he was not a Christian man by no means, I would say. Manipulating and everything else.
It's so hard to know what was in, and you always hope that at the end that someone comes to their realization. I hope that when we get to heaven that every one of them standing there with us. We don't know. All we can do is kind of speculate off what we've seen. But I will tell you, when you look at some of the direct quotes, and we haven't even gotten into a lot of the Jefferson ones yet, and Jefferson was pretty ruthless along the same lines as Thomas Paine was in his views on the Bible, to the point where he wrote his own Bible. Justin, if you want to go into that a little bit.
Yeah, that's one thing a lot of people, want to talk about. They say, well, Jefferson was a Christian. He even wrote his own Bible, the Jefferson Bible. Yeah, he did. But if you take the time to look into that Bible, there's something really peculiar about that Bible. Every single supernatural thing that Jesus done is removed from it.
Everything that was against reason, that he thought he could reason out in his mind what was possible.
Happen.
Virgin birth gone, any miracle gone. Everything was cut out. And he actually kept the Bible to himself for a while. Actually, I think the majority of his life, because he didn't want, I can't remember how they exactly said it, but thinking about the blasphemy, like that.
He didn't want to be condemned, though.
Yeah, be condemned for what he had done.
For what he done, yeah.
But he actually originally called it The Life and Morals of Jesus of Nazareth.
Yes.
Is what his
was
Bible was
title.
Originally called. And a good quote that he had, kind of referring to this, it says, "The greatest of all the reformers of the depraved religion of his own country was Jesus of Nazareth, abstracting what is really from his... it was really his from this rubbish in which it is buried, is easily distinguished by its luster from the dross of his biographers, and separable as the diamond from the dunghill." I mean...
Yeah, and that was a letter to William Short, October 31st, 1819.
Exactly. And he just said that we're taking what we want. We're going to look at the Bible and take what we want out of it. We're going to take that Jesus, you know what? He did the right thing. He stood up against the wrong people. He did this. But the writers made all that stuff up about the miracles. The writers made all that stuff up about the virgin birth. We're just going to take that out.
And he said it's easy to separate the diamonds from the dunghill.
Yeah, exactly.
The bull crap. That's what he was saying.
Exactly. And actually, he wrote something similar. I think it was it was William Short. It was where he wrote the same thing. I don't think I actually wrote that quote down. He's used that same quote in the same exact thing, the diamond to a dunghill, in another letter that he wrote to Someone else as well. I can't.
I think it was
remember
like Adams.
It might have been
something,
John
yeah.
Adams that he wrote that too, and I thought that was
Yeah, so this is just not our assumptions. This is well documented
well
stuff.
documented.
And since we're on the subject of Thomas Jefferson, I wanted to share the letter that he wrote to his nephew while he was in college. Here it says, to his nephew going to college, he wrote, "You will next read the New Testament, a history of a personage called Jesus. Keep in your eye the opposite pretensions. Eye of those who say he was begotten by God, born a virgin, suspended and reversed the laws of nature at will, and ascended bodily into heaven. And two, of those who say he was a man of illegitimate birth, who set out without pretensions to divinity, ended in believing them, and was punished capitally for sedition, by being gibbeted according to the Roman law. These questions are examined in the books that I have mentioned. They will assist you in your inquiries, but keep your reason firmly on the watch in reading them all."
I mean, if that ain't blasphemy.
Yeah, I mean, it's just
If you read the whole Bible, you have the whole Testament pointing towards them, right?
and that's what all these guys. It all went back to reason. You know, the Georgia Guidestones. You know,
Yeah.
that was recently just destroyed. You know, this was echoes from the Enlightened period. You know, it was basically the Ten Commandments of the NWO. You know,
Right.
let these be guidestones to an age of reason, written on their base. You know, Jefferson said, "But we hope that the dawn of reason and freedom of thought in the United States will do away with all of these artificial scaffoldings and restore to us the primitive and genuine doctrines." Talking about getting rid of Christianity.
I don't understand. So I mean, I'm just talking about like their reason, just in their mind, their reasoning, whatever. So you're telling me, yeah, I'm talking to Jefferson and all of them. You know, you're telling me that God created all this stuff, but yet He cannot manipulate it. I mean, that would be kind of...
He stays detached. That's the whole point.
Well,
of
I understand
deism.
that, but that'd be like I'm the builder and I built this house. You live in it, but I never come back to fix anything. You know, I don't. You know what I mean?
Yeah, what's
it's like
done is done.
what you got. You got. Too bad if the roof starts leaking.
Actually, I think here's a good quote going from John Adams that kind of refers a little bit to that, down that path a little bit. It says, "The Europeans are all deeply tainted with prejudices they can never get rid of. They are all infected with creeds and confessions of faith. They all believe that the great principle, God, which has produced the boundless universe, came down to this little ball, Earth, to be spit on by Jews. Until the awful blasphemy is gotten rid of, there will never be any liberal science in the world." And that's a letter from John Adams to Thomas Jefferson. Just
They were all like-minded.
They were. You know the old saying, "Birds of a feather flock together." Right. I mean, it's the true story. I mean, it is. They all had, and like you said, we can say that maybe certain ones were part of a certain organization, not other ones were, whatever. But you know what? If you surround yourself, it's the same thing. And don't mean this in a negative light, however, but say, I surround myself with good Christian people, I'm more likely to be drawn to that lifestyle. If I surround myself with drug dealers, I'm more likely to become a drug dealer. I mean, the more you're around a certain set of ideals and ideologies that you allow to infect your mind, infect your heart,
chamber,
infect your soul,
right,
you're more likely to start finding reason in those. And I don't use the word reason lightly when we're talking about this. You fall down that rabbit hole, and it's something that we see in society today. You're trying to see everybody use their own reason to make sense of society and why this is okay, why that's okay. We're using our human reason. We're not using God's reason that goes beyond all human understanding. We're using our reason, and it makes absolutely no sense when we use our sinful reason to try to make sense of this world. It just doesn't work. It doesn't work.
Well, it goes back to, like I was talking earlier about the atheist. If they're all like-minded, why are they beating a dead horse? There's something telling them. Something's hitting at them. You know what I'm saying? Like, if they're both like-minded, why are they trying to...
Ephesians 6:12, that's why.
Yeah. Throw it under,
we fight not against flesh and blood.
Right.
Yeah. And as you say, backing it up, how this spread like the tentacles of an octopus goes back to the Illuminati, the enlightened ones. When you look into them, it says the goal was to gather like-minded people and exalt them to government office and spread their influence and ideas around the world. The Illuminati was established the same year as the American Revolution. This date is on the bottom of the Great Seal and at the base of the All-Seeing Eye Pyramid. Many founding fathers were known Freemasons. The Illuminati was a cornerstone of America. The Illuminati wanted out from under the monarch and the church, and they had three main goals. 1, separation of church and state. Number 2, controls of the power of state, or government. And 3, emancipation of women / all peoples. So look at America today. They got what they wanted.
Oh, yeah.
Thomas Paine wrote the tracts for George Washington. Thomas Paine had connections with the Illuminati. Ben Franklin brought Paine to England. Franklin was involved with numerous secret societies in America and Europe. Franklin was the master of the lodge in Paris, which was the epicenter of the Illuminati activity. The lodge is called the Nine Sisters. He was also, that book that I mentioned earlier, Fire in the Minds of Men by James Billington, wrote that Paine lived in a menage a trois with Nicholas Bonneville and his wife in 1797 to 1802. Bonneville was directly involved with the Bavarian Illuminati and was the channel of influence to Paine. Direct connection to the Illuminati and Paine, who inspired the revolution, wrote tracts for George Washington, his best friend, and with many other founding fathers. Paine even wrote about the origin of Freemasonry, like he had first-hand knowledge. It's highly debated that he was a member, but all signs point that he was. There was even lodges named after Paine. Mm-hmm. So even if he wasn't a direct member, right, he had direct influence and friends in the inner circles.
It's the ideals. We go back again to the ideals. What were everybody trying to accomplish? You don't have to be members of a club to all have the same ideas. But I guess let's jump a little further down the founding fathers line to the Ben Franklin. I got a feeling that you want to hit that up.
Definitely, and you hinted on it. Go ahead.
Well, I'll start.
Well-known Freemason here. No dispute here.
No dispute. And he, like you said, he was the master of two different temples.
He also lived two different lives. Because first in England,
at least,
or in Britain, he was on the inside, and then he got kicked out, which is why he went to America.
Well, he just like the founding fathers said, they wanted out from underneath the monarch of the church, because the church, in their eyes, bonded free thinkers. And, they wanted out from underneath their wing. That way they could practice what they wanted to practice. Yes, and do what they wanted to do. That was the number one goal.
Well, let me start with a quote when he was asked about Jesus, as far as the divinity of Jesus. He says, "I think the system of morals in his religion, as he left them to us, the best the world ever saw or is likely to see, but I apprehend it has received various corrupt changes, and I have, with most of the present dissenters in England, some doubts as to his divinity." And I think that leads us right into a good Bible verse, actually. I think this one was on the documentary, kind of referring to this same exact incident. But in the last days, perilous times shall come for men, shall be lovers of themselves, having a form of godliness, but denying the power thereof. And that's 2 Timothy 3, 1, 2, and 5 there. And I think that you just see that taking the divinity out, taking Jesus out of the religion, trying to, once again, kind of replace that divinity with reason. And over again, you see this with each of these founding fathers. And I mean, we're not going to hit everybody tonight. There's no possible way. Was it 52 people that signed the Declaration of Independence? I think it was. We don't have time to go through everybody. We're hitting, the big name people, but their ideas were the same. Their ideology, when you talk about, there's God. Yep. The Bible's there. Jesus was a great guy.
Yeah. That's it.
That's it.
He was a good dude.
And what's the anytime you can, just take that little bit of truth out. Remember how we always talk about the way Satan shows himself, or the way the Antichrist will show himself is he will appear like, Jesus is great, but he's going to change the truth enough that he'll corrupt it. And just enough. And this is taking a little too far, taking all the divinity out. I mean, it's pretty obvious, but it's something that we need to be on the watch for in our society today. When you see these things, and as soon as someone, I don't care if it's a pastor, I don't care if it's a president, I don't care if it's a leader of some secret society, as soon as they take God's word and they pervert it in some way or another, where they take Jesus out of the focus, they take God, they take Jesus' divinity, Jesus born of the virgin birth, Jesus being our salvation. They take that out, then you can see who's really behind what they're saying.
Yeah, and Franklin said, original sin was as ridiculous as imputed righteousness. He's talking about Jesus. And going back to the lambskin thing that I had mentioned earlier, I knew about the lambskin and what they believed it was, but I never realized this till I seen this documentary. But, with that quote, he's talking about the righteousness through Christ. The Masons believed that, their covering was through works, not through belief, of Christ.
That's part of getting in. You have to do so much time, community service, and give so much food to the
and all these
whatever.
Good works, yeah. But, it all goes back to the coverings of Adam and Eve, but I didn't know this, but the original draft of the Declaration of Independence was written on a white lambskin Masonic apron. Huh. The original draft.
That I did not know.
Yeah. Mormons and Masons are buried in their white aprons. It's their covering before God. It's debated if Jefferson was a Freemason, but he is depicted on a list of Masonic presidents given out by these Masonic lodges. And as we mentioned earlier, Franklin was the master of the lodge in Philadelphia and Paris. In England, he was a member of the Hellfire Club, which was a secret society originally known as the Monks of Mentonham Abbey. Openly mocked other religions with sex orgies and satanic rites and sacrifices. And above the door, this is the most interesting thing, above the door of that lodge said, "Do as thou wilt." The famous quote of Aleister Crowley,
Exactly.
who is a known Mason.
And also Satanist.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a whole nother episode for a whole nother time, because Aleister Crowley, and I told Ben, you actually were with me when I
You accidentally bought one of his books.
accidentally bought a book of one of his followers, and that was, when I read it, it was something about the Book of Enoch, the keys to the Book of Wisdom or something, and I just assumed it was something about the Book of Enoch as far as, the apocryphal book. It was not, and it was horrifying. And I read about a chapter, and then I will tell you, a dream that was, I would call it more of a vision, because I will tell you right now, that was not a dream. That was something that was brought on me from the evil of that book. And I know that sounds, if you've never had something like that happen or never been around it, I know that sounds crazy, but I will tell you, and I know there's people out there that are like, yep, I know what you're talking about.
The cover even looked kind of.
But I'll tell you,
creepy.
I have never felt evil like that when I read that. I read one chapter I read one paragraph, and it was talking about genetic manipulation and the best way to, as far as like further our human genetics and things of this nature. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure this isn't in the Book of Enoch. So I'm telling you, Ben was with me when I burned that book.
Oh yeah, he's like, I got a book we need to burn.
Bad. But I'll tell you, it's evil.
It was like the covering looked like it could have been a Bible. It's probably about as thick as a Bible.
It was a perverted one.
Oh yeah. Oh, I mean, it even kind of felt a little creepy. He's like, he went to his building, and I'm like, it's in your building? He goes,
I ain't bringing it at my house.
I ain't leaving it at my house.
It was out in the shed, yeah.
Yeah.
And I literally, I handed it and I showed it to you, and you went about to read. I said, no, don't open it.
Yeah, we threw it right in the fire.
I know if
and
you're out there,
that sucker burnt quick.
and if you've never had an experience like that where you can feel evil, thank the Lord that you haven't. But when
It
it's
is
there,
creepy. It's creepy.
you can feel the hand of it on you. And I can say that, and I can see that even in what we're talking about today. I know I got off base there a little bit with what we're talking about, but you can see that same hand was on these men, that was pushing their ideologies and pulling them away from what, at the time would have been mostly Roman Catholicism at the time, where they came from. But you can see that they were getting pulled away from that. They were strayed away, that there was a lot of evil working on them. And we, like I've said a couple times already, that Ephesians 6:12, we're not fighting against flesh and blood, but it gets intense. And I think that everybody needs to make sure that they know when there's
testing
things,
all spirits.
Well, test all spirits. When there's things around you, you might, I don't know. I can't keep going on this, Justin.
We'll go into this. February 11th, 1998. You touched on that. Go ahead and take a deep dive.
Well, a little interesting that they were redoing Ben Franklin's house. They were kind of working on the foundation, and underneath the foundation, they happened to find, I think it was 10 bodies, correct?
Yes.
And there was 4 adults and 6 children. They all looked like they had been dissected, for lack of a better word,
dissected
and burnt. And they dated the bodies back to the time that he would have been living in that house. Ben Franklin. I mean, it from there you can speculate whatever you want, but that's a little creepy to say that there's, and we talk a lot about certain secret societies and things of that nature, and I'm not necessarily talking about, I'm not talking about Masons, I'm not talking about anything. There could have been some other secret society, could have been Illuminati.
This was when he was in England, and when he was a member of the Hellfire Club.
And the
Hellfire Club was known for their sexual rituals and satanic occult type stuff. It's a good possibility that these were sacrifices that, and he was a man of science that he brought home after they killed them to cut them open and.
Well, he had a friend. Didn't he have a friend that was?
Yeah, Dr. Wilson Hewson. He was a friend of Franklin's that ran a medical school inside of his home. The newspaper that when they found this, tried to whitewash it and make Ben look as good as he could, but they claimed that this could have been his bodies and cadavers and stuff like that. But it's like, even if they were,
why would it be under your foundation?
Why would you bury them under your house?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you give them proper burial?
Well, the thing is too, they speculated that it could have been the fact that he was looking for cadavers to work on, and
or even grave
he was
robbing.
a grave robber that went and took the bodies to look at them. But why, if you already dug them up, why wouldn't you take them back and put them where they were, rather than putting them under your house to potentially indict you?
Well, he's hiding them.
But I know, and that's the thing is, who know? But we don't know for sure if that's Franklin.
But either way,
it's not else.
It's not good Christian practice.
I wouldn't say
I would say it's not good human practice.
The fruit is not too ripe.
I mean, Christian or not, you don't bury bodies underneath your house.
You sure don't.
But even
I mean, that's just reason. I mean, come on, guy.
But even when you go into like just the architecture, a whole episode could be done on that. If you ever go to Washington D.C.,
oh yeah, all of it.
You got the
whole D.C.
The phallus. The what they call
Washington Monument.
Yeah, Washington Monument. I can't remember the exact numbers, but the total height of it is 666 feet. There's so much of it standing above ground, so much of it below ground, which is a total of 666 feet. It's documented. And it's a whole like Egyptian pagan theme, because you see all those phalluses in Egypt. And if you look, that monument is lined up perfectly with the dome of the White House. And what they would say, and it's documented in all the tablets and stuff of Egypt, that when a new pharaoh was brought in, he was the embodiment of that god. That the chariot would ride to the temple at a certain time, and they would have all these sacrifices and rituals to where they would call the spirit of the god to indwell inside the pharaoh. So he was the embodiment. Possessed by this god, and all the times and stuff line up to where the shadow of that phallus would enter the temple, and it was domed like a woman's womb. So it was basically the god impregnating the womb of the temple where that god was, and then he would come out, and boom, he was born, come out of the womb, and he was God in the flesh incarnate. And they set up our capital this way. And Ben, you talked about this before we recorded.
I've heard things about when the president takes his oath that there's actually like a demonic or whatever ritual in the basement right underneath where the ceremony's happening above to do practically the same thing.
So it's their recreation.
Right. They're taking the spirit of whatever out of the previous president and putting it into the present president.
Yeah. You know what I'm really happy about? When it's all over, I'll be in heaven. Won't have to worry about any of this nonsense.
Yeah.
Right? Because this is terrifying.
Oh, yeah. And all the buildings, you got all them people you see, they're gods and goddesses. Jupiter and the god of reason.
Well, they're saying like all of D.C. is architecturally laid out.
Oh, yeah, like an overhead view. There's pentagrams. I mean,
all
everything.
Kinds of crazy stuff.
Yeah.
And it's all honesty, Freemason stuff, too.
This stuff, it does. It's
definitely creepy.
To me, it's terrifying when you really think, and like I said, this was something when Justin brought up that he wanted to look a little bit into the founding fathers. You know, my idea was, there's probably a couple bad eggs in the dozen. And then you start looking into it, and I'm struggling to find something. I'm struggling to find something positive. And it's, it's sad, but I guess that once again, this is where we said before that you need to test all the spirits. You need to know, to know the truth, but you need to look, and you need to know thine enemy, right? If we don't know who we're fighting against, we're already losing. If we don't know, and right now, we are fighting that spiritual war all around us. And I don't care what you're seeing, if it's a Canadian school teacher, if it's whatever else that's trying to show themselves doing something just to prove a point, trying to basically turn God's creations into abominations. And we're seeing this everywhere, and we're seeing it become more and more accepted. And the fact of the matter is that those evil powers have never had as much control, I would say, since the flood as they do right now. And that's a little scary to think about, because what happened when they had that much power before?
Oh, well, the flood happened.
What's going to happen next time?
Fire. It ain't going to be flood. It's going to be fire.
And one thing, when I was looking, with Thomas Paine, when he was on his deathbed, it says that many Christian people went to his house and tried to witness to him and get him to recant all his blasphemous things he said against the Bible, Christianity, and Christ. And he, kept refusing. Well, and his biographers wrote about him, and they said that, there was two contradictory stories. One of the biographers said that he was so paranoid that he didn't want to be alone. He always had somebody with him at all times because he was paranoid because death was coming for him. And then the other biographer said, yes, he did always want somebody with him, but it was for a witness, and that he told the people with him, I got so many Christians coming to me and trying to get me to recant. I do not want to be left alone. That way anybody can say that I had a deathbed confession or conversion. I'm holding fast. God is not real. Jesus Christ is not real. I am the God of my own mind. And that shows you the Antichrist spirit that he had, and he went on his deathbed holding fast to everything he said and written.
That's crazy.
2 John 7. I say this because many deceivers have gone out into the world. They deny Jesus Christ came in the real body. Such a person is a deceiver and an antichrist. I tell you, it is just this whole thing really, like I said, it's really kind of demoralizing in a way. Just
it kind of makes you not want to be patriotic.
Well, no. So I think that the thing is always intent, right? I think it's always intent. The majority of people that are Christian people in this country have good intent. That we do love this country because we're allowed to practice our religion. We're allowed to proclaim that God is above us, that Jesus saved us. We're allowed to do that. A lot of countries we can't do that in. You're put to death for that. So I think that's another. Well, I think it's
the devil
way.
Used or intended for harm, God.
That is exactly what I was
right.
going to say. Is that God takes something that's evil and turns it around for good. He takes and makes the best out of it, and He's given us a platform. In most other countries, we couldn't have this conversation and be able to put it out there. Where in this country, we have a freedom of speech for now, that we're able to talk about these things, be able to profess our faith, talk about how much we love God. And, we're looking at a lot of this stuff, and we're looking at, different people's input, but we're looking at a lot of things that are factual, that are quotes that are from individual letters written by these certain people. This is stuff that's true. This is out there. But in the end, we only have to answer for ourselves, right? In the end, what you say when you're out in front of Jesus, when you get to heaven, you know what Jesus is going to say to you? Ben, what's He going to say to you? Well done, my good and faithful servant. my fellow Sasquatch. No, well done, my good
You
and
have an
faithful
awesome
servant.
beard.
He's not going to say that.
Probably not.
No.
He probably has a better one.
No, he's going to say trim that thing.
My goodness, man.
Well,
But that's the whole point.
yes.
My
I-
good and faithful servant, well done. And that's something that we need to focus on and put this evil behind us because it's all around us all the time. We can't let it affect us. We can't let it affect our families. We can't let you think about us. I'm scared for our children in the way the world's going right now. I know where I'm at with God. Where are our kids going to be?
Yep. That's true. Because they're, which we're homeschooling our kids, but.
And honestly,
mean-
if there's one place where going to school, even public school's okay. Like here in Tennessee, and I don't know where anybody's listening, I love this, but my kids have been in a public school here, and they have nativity scenes at Christmas in the public school. You know what? In Florida, they might have hung you up by your toes if you did that. It's just you don't do that anywhere else. Tennessee and some of the other Bible Belt states, we have such an advantage right now that we can still profess this, that we can still talk about our faith, that you're not subjected to a lot of the scrutiny that so many people are. But I count my blessings for that. I'm so glad we moved here with our kids for that reason and that reason alone. And I kind of like you guys too.
Mm. Which this study wouldn't be complete if we didn't touch on the origins of Freemason. The Freemasonry. It's kind of they say it's ancient. It dates back all the way to Adam. Adam was the first alchemist / Freemason. But it's one of those things that's kind of lost and it's open to speculation. But what they hold to and what they put forward to everybody and tell, in the Masonic lodges, there's 4 pillars. And it's mentioned that these represent the grand masters on which Freemasonry was built. It goes back to King Solomon, Hiram, the king of Tyre, and the master builder, Hiram Habif. And it talks about when Solomon was building his temple, that he wrote to the king of Tyre and asked for their best architects, their best wood, and all this kind of stuff. Well, it briefly mentions this guy named Abif, or Habif, I don't know how you say it. But basically, in a nutshell, they believed that this guy was like a master of divine knowledge, that he knew all things, that, that God or the angels or whatever had just gave all this information to just a select handful of people, and he was one of them. And he had 4 people that was basically his understudies. And you had to follow this, master for so long, and he would just, as you were ready, give little bits of the knowledge to you. Well, these guys became jealous and wanted it now. So before the temple was finished, they kept begging him, we're ready, master, give us the knowledge. And he kept refusing. No, you're not ready. No, you're not ready. So these 4 guys devised a plan and entered in the 4 corners of the temple and surrounded him with weapons and threatened his life if he didn't divulge the secrets. And he didn't, and he was murdered. So this is basically Freemasonry's attempt to regather the lost knowledge of this Grand Master that was murdered. And all this symbology and stuff is in their temples today. So that they try to say it's biblical.
There's nothing biblical.
But this is a bunny trail, but I think it's an interesting bunny trail. A lot of Freemasons practiced alchemy. And I never looked into that. I just, when I think of alchemy, I think of Rumpelstiltskin, spinning straw into gold, and that's basically all I knew. It was just some, crazy whack job guys that thought that they could turn lead or straw or all these other elements into gold. But as we were taking this deep dive, I bought a book on Freemasonry, and right beside of it, was another book on alchemy, the practice of the Freemasons. And I was like, well, it'd probably be interesting. I'll just dive into it and check it out. And man, it was. It was interesting. There's so much more to it. But like, it's a practice of turning, lead or dross into gold. But a lot of them looked at it, this was also a spiritual process. The process was referred to as the great work. The practitioner was refining and changing himself also. They didn't need baptism or God. Once again, they were their own gods. Sir Isaac Newton, practiced alchemy. An Arab alchemist, Al-Hazin, invented the camera obscura, alcoholic distillation, phosphorus, porcelain, and sodium nitrate were all products of alchemists' labs. Newton spoke of the art as concealing secrets that would be dangerous if in the wrong hands. Some believe he knew that it held the secrets to nuclear power. It's pretty wild stuff. But the goal was to produce something called the Philosopher's Stone. We've heard that with, the Harry Potter series. This stone had magical properties. Writers, Jacob Boschim, sorry if I got that wrong, but it was 1575 to 1624 was his lifespan, and Thomas Vaughan, 1621 to 1665, equated the Philosopher's Stone with Christ and can be seen as mysteries as much as the alchemist. Whoever created the stone would gather much wealth, both physical and spiritual, and prolong life. Astrology was always been important in alchemy. Spring was the best time to practice because it was the alignment of Aries and Taurus. It was said that this art came from Egypt. The name alchemy means art of the black land, aka the black fertile soil from the Nile. And as I just went into this, man, it was just so wild. And this, I think, is a direct reference to the fallen angels and the teachings, from the book of Enoch. Mm-hmm. It screamed it out to me as I was reading it. It says, the Dutch physician Harem Bockhaven, which I mentioned earlier, who had a study of alchemy in the 18th century, believed that it meant occult or mystery, seeing a derivation from the Hebrew shaman or Haman, meaning mystery, something that was not to be revealed to the people at large, but treasured as a religious secret. Tertullian, writing in the late 2nd century, tells how a race of giants were born to certain women who had relations with a race of fallen angels. They taught their wisdom to whoever asked. The books that held their secrets were called Shema. Clement of Alexandria describes them as being masters of metallurgy, biology, magic, and astrology. Those are all the teachings that the fallen angels taught. Even when we talked with Ryan Peterson, he talked about Naaman and his sons. What was the first things that they become masters of all of a sudden? They were metallurgists and blacksmiths and all this stuff. So, all this, it lines up pretty much hand in glove. But, few men are said to have created the Philosopher's Stone that actually completed the great work. One was named Nicolas Flamel. He was a French alchemist from 1330 to 1417. It says, one night an angel came to him in a dream. It showed him a book, and before he could grab the book, the angel vanished. Later, in 1357, he found the book from his dream and bought it. It was written by Abraham Eleazar. It was on the turning metals into gold. He discovered a code hidden in its pages. Flamel had an ancient Kabbalist text thought to have been lost forever. Friday the 17th of January, 1382, he created the Philosopher's Stone. Over the next 15 years, he acquired huge wealth. He funded 14 hospitals in Paris alone, and he gave substantial donations to 7 churches and, I can't read the name of the town. I'm sorry, my handwriting's awful. But yeah, in his town, he donated to 7 churches. In March of 1417, he died. A mob looted his house searching for the stone or his writings on how to create it. They found nothing. They even dug up his body to see if he was buried with it. The grave was said to be empty. They were said to have fled to India and were spotted around 1700 and also in Paris in 1761. It's interesting that all, quote-unquote, genuine alchemists lived on average twice as long as the average span. Jabbar was in his mid-90s, Albert Magnus, 87, Roger Bacon, 80, Isaac Newton, 84, and Fulsuni was also over 100. It's pretty wild stuff, these stories. Another one was John Frederick Helvetius, December the 27th, 1666. A stranger came to his house in The Hague. The man introduced himself as a brass founder named Elias. The stranger produced 3 small yellow stones from an ivory box, and he told Helvetius these were philosopher's stones. Helvetius asked if he could do a transmutation, and the man declined, saying that the time was not right. 3 weeks later, he returned and gave him one of the stones, but not before cutting it in half and throwing the other into the fire. Helvetius commented on its small size, but was told that half the size of a walnut was more than enough. He heated some of the lead and added a piece of stone. The lead became gold. He took it to the goldsmith, who said that it was the finest gold he had ever tested. He never saw the stranger again. Another fallen angel encounter.
Well, we talk about that forbidden technology all the time, and that search for it. I
mean, it's just wild to think about. And, I never read into this stuff, and it was just like, from a biblical lens, it was like, I seen what it was.
Mm-hmm. And that's the crazy part. You look at so many of these things. I've been reading a book, a Graham Hancock book, and it kind of goes down some of these same rabbit holes, but it just blows me away. He's such a smart guy, can take God out of the equation. If you just put God in it, it gives you all the answers. It just shows you the whole picture, but just can't quite get there.
But it says it's almost like these strangers approached these men to warn them of dangers, of intellectual and scientific changes that Europe was experiencing at that time. In furthering science and technology, at the expense of all else, humanity would become dangerously and unbalanced. Though obsessive attachment to the left brain values as materialism, rationality, human beings would lose sight of their divine origins, something alchemy could help restore, if not forgotten. And that was a quote from that book, But another thing, gunpowder was a discovery from Chinese alchemy. Mm-hmm. But what was really interesting, now this ties in, and now the book don't make this connection, but I kind of made this connection, was Indian alchemy. Well, with Indian alchemy, Shiva is important to Indian alchemy. She is the mother the alchemist works upon, and is said to be a parkika. I'm sorry, I can't pronounce some of these words that well, but which it means primordial matter, dark matter. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking CERN here. Shiva they got a statue of her right outside. They're trying to discover dark matter. Okay? It says, this is a matter which all things are made. It is the physical manifestation of the goddess herself. To understand the great work, which was alchemy, was to work with the process of nature and feminine forces, and to become one with them. This is the ultimate spiritual union of opposites through physical union of lovers. The union which Mercury was the ego is finally killed, enabling the alchemist to achieve the highest form of freedom. The hydrogen collider, what does it do? It collides two opposite things, uniting them. It's like that's is CERN modern day alchemy? I mean, it's crazy to think about. And the whole Indian alchemy, it's a whole spiritual thing. And I know I can go with this for a while, but I'll end with this on the alchemy stuff. Carl Jung, he spoke on spiritual alchemy. This was not a religious man by no means. He spoke out against, Christianity and stuff. But he says, the opus magnum had two aims: to rescue the human soul and salvation of the cosmos. Therefore, it was psychological. He became counseled that the Nagiro, or initial black chaotic stage of the work, was in fact the unconsciousness, and that's what they call the first stage when you're messing with the raw materials. So he believed, it was dealing with the subconsciousness. And it says, the stages were psychological processes that marked growth of a personality into balanced maturity. The first stage, matter is cooked. This is a personal crisis that threatens to destroy the personality. It must be destroyed voluntarily. This surrender of ego is vital. To be successful, the alchemist needs to be humble and ego-free. Later stages of the work is self-purification. This corresponds with albedo, or the whitening of the matter. By continuing the work, they are grounded once again. And then the final stage is the complete integration and acceptance of the person's experience and personality. Jung held, we all go through these processes many times throughout our lives. Alchemists have always known that quantum physics are now just realizing. Our state of mind directly influences our surroundings and helps create them. The final stage is up to the individual. It takes one's knowledge a step further to consciously marry the desperate elements of one's experiences and wield them together in a complementary whole, to transmute into the living philosopher's stone. Then the great work is done. We are redeemed and ourselves, and in the process, redeem the cosmos. Alchemists agree with the Hebrew proverb, he who saves one life saves the entire world.
That sounds like a book I'm going to have to borrow.
Yes, it's wild. But it shows you, once again, this is something the Freemasons believed and they practiced because it was something that they didn't need God. They themselves became gods through their own willpower and magic. These were the founding fathers of America.
Just going through this, and it's just been one of those things where, every time we do something where we do a deep dive and we really research something, we give ourselves a couple weeks to really dig into something. I always learn something. You always pull some, we always say the nuggets, right? You always pull those nuggets out and you find something new and you find something that relates. And it's, you have those little aha moments. This is one of those things when we, Justin brought this up, like I said before, is that I wasn't ready for this rabbit hole. There's just more here than I ever thought. And it blows my mind. And it's one of those things where we really just need to understand our own personal relationship with God. We need to not let others influence it, especially when you can look around and see people that, we believe are godly. We believe we're following the right people. We believe we're diving into these things that are potentially positive. But if God's not there, I don't know. This one was a hard one for me to get through because it actually really bothered me, I'll be honest, to find out a lot of this stuff. Well, anyway, thank you everybody for tuning in and listening, and sorry for ending on such a sour note, but
Christ is King.
Christ is King, and we'll talk to you again next time.
See ya.
We thank you for listening to the Dig Bible Podcast. Questions, comments, or future episode ideas? We'd love to hear from you at the dig423@gmail.com. If you enjoy our content, don't forget to share, subscribe, and check out our Facebook group at the Dig Podcast. Remember, you can't lean on a shovel and pray for a hole. You gotta dig.